Okay, perfect. Thank you for just bearing with us for one moment while we get this event up on Facebook Live. So welcome to Not at the Museum Thursday nights. We're coming to you live in your bedrooms, in your living rooms, wherever you might be. Thank you so much for joining us. As usual, we would like to begin our program with a land acknowledgement. The Niagara Region of Ontario is located on the traditional shared territory of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Chinootan peoples. The Chinootan people have called these lands home for thousands of years, and more recently, the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee have been sharing the land as one dish, one spoon treaty territory. This is the museum's second year running the Coming Out Stories series, which are evenings designed for the LGBTQ+ and straight communities alike. Each night, we welcome a different special guest to share their personal experiences coming out to their families and communities. I am thrilled that the museum has been seen as an ally and a safe space to help facilitate these much-needed conversations in the Niagara region. Without further ado, I would like to introduce someone, the person who is responsible for this series, whose tireless efforts have brought some of the most beautiful and thought-provoking programs to the museum. Tonight, our host, Falynn Shaw.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Thank you so much, Christine. And I have to say, the land acknowledgement is probably one of my favorite parts of every show that I've done with you. This is the fifth, so this is the fifth time I've been able to hear that lovely land acknowledgement, and I'm just very thankful that the museum makes sure that that is a part of this. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Falynn Shaw, and I will be your host tonight. I'm so happy to be here with you all on this monumental occasion. You might ask why it is monumental. It is probably the first time that this city has ever taken coming out stories and shared them in such a way. And I do feel that being able to do this virtually, that we're going to reach a lot more people than we would have if it was in person. While I did love to bring this to you in person, I do find that with the help of the museum that we were able to translate an online platform. These are strange and challenging times that we've all been going through, to say the least, but I think it's very important that we still have queer voices to be heard. Like I said, this is the fifth edition of Coming Out Stories, and I'm honored to be able to introduce tonight's very special guest, who is a friend of mine. I met tonight's guest about a year ago, just over a year ago, when Patrick Alexander, another comic, and I decided to put together a queer comedy show. I just have to say, I really lucked out because those comics were amazing. I didn't know what to expect, and I'm glad I didn't set my standards because they would have been completely blown out of the water. We were able to do the queer comedy show at Niagara's first safe space, which is called Third Space Cafe on Queen Street. If you haven't been there, I'd love for you to check it out. Show your support. It is a nonprofit organization that supports many marginalized communities. We are so happy to have Alice here. Alice is here live, not with me, but she is in Toronto right now, and I just love technology. Alice Rose is a comedian, producer, and creator of Comic Sans Production, a network of comedy shows that highlight diverse, marginalized talent. A storyteller at heart, Alice combines introspective personal narratives with larger observations on stage to create intimate comedy experience. She also loves to write about comedy, queer relations, and her favorite zombie movies. And I'm just like, thumbs up on that. I have a lot of respect for Alice. She is a huge advocate for the trans community, as well as human rights all around. For those of you who do not know what trans means, trans is short form for transgender. Transgender individuals have gender identity or gender expression that is different from the sex they were assigned at birth. This individual is incredible. I hope you enjoy, and all the best to you, Alice. Thank you for being a part of this show. Without further delay, I would love to introduce to you tonight's guest, Alice Rose.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Leave it to Falynn to make someone feel like a star. I love this. I hope everyone else is as comfy as I am. As a career introvert, I'm loving this. I'm loving all this. Like, I'm in my home office right now. I've been here for 164 days. Yeah. This is, I love that we can do this. This is wonderful. Thank you to Christine and Falynn for all of your hard work, to the Niagara Falls Museums. I love this approach of history. Little background story. I was a history major at one point for like 1 year. I majored in everything for just a little bit of time, but I love that they're taking this approach to history as this recurring vehicle of culture. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to share my story and hear about other people's coming out stories and other people's experiences. This is absolutely fantastic. If this were a live crowd, I'd be like, give your hands, make some noise for City of Niagara Falls. You know what? Do it anyways. You can hear you. You know what you're doing. I can hear you too. Yeah, that's the magic of Zoom. You pay a little extra and you get to hear, pipe yourself into other people's houses. The CIA is doing it. Why can't I? I don't even know what I'm saying. I'm sorry. I'm just really, really happy to be here. Oh my, I promised myself I'd start on a serious note, and then I blew it. Because everyone's backgrounds, everyone's atmospheres were so cool. We saw Christine's butterfly painting. We saw Falynn in front of a bunch of books. I was planning to move over to my sofa and do this in front of my bookshelf. Then I realized it's just coloring books and Dan Brown novels, and I want you to take me seriously tonight. So I decided to come into my office with this beautiful painting. That's an abstraction of the Arthur meme. If you look really closely, it's Arthur the Aardvark. That's literary, right? Children's literature is literature, and it's him with a balled up fist. That's as creative as we get. My girlfriend's brother painted that for her birthday, and I think it's incredible. I absolutely love it. Okay, starting on a serious note. Bear with me. And scene. I just wanted to share a little poem that I wrote initially. It's really short, so bear with me. When I was younger, I liked to pretend I was a girl who disguised herself as a boy so that she could do boys' things. Until I grew up and learned it was easier to simply pretend I was a boy. And I call that poem The Game of Make-Believe That Lasted 30 years. That's how it felt. I didn't, when I was a child, I had a lot of emotions, I had a lot of feelings, I had a lot of abstract concepts that I didn't know how to analyze and how to unpack. So it felt a lot like I was pretending, and that's what this poem is about. Let's start a little bit about me, I guess. My name is Alice Rose. That is my name, believe it or not. Some exciting news. I just saved a bundle of my car insurance by switching to female. As Falynn said, I am a transgender woman, and what that means, because I know some of you are picturing, automatically picturing the defaults that I have a penis between my legs, but it's more complicated than that. I actually have a penis between my butt cheeks, because I'm a lady. I've promised to keep it PG, but we can't talk about this without talking about penises. I'm sorry. That's all I'm gonna do. But now, some of you probably saw a little notification or a little ad that said, coming out stories with Alice Rose, and you heard that name. And I've been told that name seems a little more basic than I am. And I understand, I know what I look like. I know that I look like the lesbian porn parody of Dora the Explorer. Sometimes post-op Kevin Smith, if you will. I look like a transformer who's just about to morph into a Subaru Outback with a full-grown German Shepherd in the back, you know? I get that. But before I start my story, I want to tell you a little bit about me to prove to you that I am actually as basic as my name suggests, because I'm proud of it and I live it. First, I was once found buying an entire week's worth of groceries at Chapters. Not just for books and fuzzy scarves. You can get everything there. A lot of charcuterie. I can't go into a Kate Spade or any store that sells anything by Kate Spade without buying at least one thing. It's a bad habit, but I'm really, really proud of my matching purse, wallet, and lower back tattoo. And I guess this is a good point to bring up my pronouns. My pronouns are live, laugh, love. Yes. Can we address quarantine for a little bit? We can't not talk about it. It's literally the elephant in my room, which is being piped into your living rooms or washrooms, I guess. I really do hope everyone's having an okay time in the quarantine and surviving this time, because I know it's difficult. I know it's hard because it has been, I looked at it this morning and I counted the days. It's been 167 days. 167 days since they called a global pandemic and asked people to start staying at home and quarantining. And that's a long time to stay inside and not engage with people. It's a very long, boring time. But believe it or not, I still don't want to hear your podcast. I'm sorry. 167 days of the new normal, things like lining up at the grocery store to buy your groceries. Because ironically, now that marijuana is legal, we have to buy everything the same way that we used to buy our drugs. 167 days, that's a long time to be working from home. Something I struggle with. My girlfriend and I try to get a little bit of normalcy. We try to simulate the office environment. She works right there, right behind me. I don't understand camera perspectives. I'm trying to go from one part of the screen to the other. There we go. There we go. Yeah, so we do little things around the house to simulate the office environment. So for instance, even though we're this close to one another, we still send emails and text messages back and forth. So throughout the day, I'll just send her a little email like, hey team, just so you know, going forward, I love you. Then I'll send it off, but I'll BCC some random email just to mess with her, you know? Like, who's that going out to? We still try to keep a professional office environment. So every time she needs my attention and she touches my shoulder or she'll give me a little kiss on the cheek, I do threaten to report her to HR. Not very effective though. HR is just our dog. And he's drooling on a pillow right now. So I don't know how much help he's gonna be. Yeah, I don't know. But it's a long time, 167 days. I've had 167 days of solitude to write something for this coming out story, and I haven't. Can you tell I'm stalling for time? I can't. Flawless. I'm so professional. No, the big thing is that it's been 167 days without being able to do what I love, which is getting on stage and engaging with people and reaching people. That's doing stand-up comedy. That's my passion. That's my purpose for life. And it used to take up a huge amount of time, and now it's I try to fill that time up with like gardening. I've been gardening a lot, trying to grow some vegetables, and I do my best to entertain and, you know, leave the plants with a little bit of laughter in their lives, but they're not very responsive. I mean, the gnomes just sit there stone-faced, no reactions whatsoever. And you'd think, like, at least there aren't hecklers, but believe it or not, squirrels in the bushes just chirping down at you, it can hurt. It can hurt. And it hits different when a rodent tells you to shut up. It really does. It really, really does. I'm super grateful to Falynn for asking me to tell my coming out story and to have this opportunity. And when she reached out like 6 months ago, trust me, I've had plenty of time to prepare. But I was really lingering on the idea of coming out and my coming out story. And it's really difficult because all of the answers to questions that people have, and trust me, if you've ever come out as trans, you'll know that people have no problem asking intrusive and penetrating questions. And really the answers to all of those questions are usually very long and complicated. So it's difficult to communicate answers across to people. So people will ask me, and I feel bad because I give the same answer over and over again. People will ask me, well, what's transitioning like? What's that process like? And it's hard to say because it's really long and complicated. And people will ask about sexuality and they're like, so are you gay? Or again, that's long and complicated. Or people will be like, hey, what's up between your legs? Again. Yeah, sexuality is another totally different thing about, like, a totally different aspect about that, because that's completely separate for gender, and we'll get to that. But it's difficult because my gender is very uncommon, or very not very mainstream, something people don't understand immediately. And my sexuality is as well. I actually, I sexually identify as an attention whore, as most of you I'm sure do. I see all those apps on your phone, right? And this causes a problem because I do love dating apps, and I love getting in there and you know, getting all of those nice comments, and I love that feeling, right? But fortunately, I have a phone with not a lot of storage, so I have to be picky about the apps that I'm on, because if I want to try a new one, I have to delete an old one. You know, I have to pull up that app on my phone and feel the weight of it in my hand and ask myself, does this spark joy? And the first app that I decided to delete was Grindr, or you know, some of you may know it as Pokemon Go, but with genitals, with lots of genitals. Anyway, this is my long roundabout way of saying it's really difficult to tell my coming out story because honestly, there isn't much to tell. I came out to a lot of people suddenly and quickly, and for the most part, everyone accepted me and supported me. Like, pretty much. We all have that one uncle, right? And I've got him too. He's the one on Facebook who's like sharing stories from media sources that no one's ever heard, with these like conspiracy theories and stuff like that. And when I came out to my uncle, he didn't take it well, and we had a falling out, and we no longer talk. And he said some really hurtful things, but some of those things were like, the Illuminati paid Caitlyn Jenner to transition in order to collapse the Catholic Church. So like, I can't be that hurt about it, right? I can't put too much weight into those opinions. Really can't let that hurt my feelings. The first person I ever came out to was my sister. And I still had a lot of questions that I had to answer. a lot of questions I didn't know the answers to. All I knew was that I wasn't a boy. So I told her I was gender fluid. I told her I didn't know what my gender was, but there's a bit of girl in there somewhere. And she was really supportive. She was just super excited. She was like, so that means I can borrow that sweater? Like she was just, it was almost like she got a sister that she secretly wanted. But it was just me. Like she immediately went home and cleaned out her closet for me, and she was throwing like clothes at me that didn't fit me, but she was like, try this on, try this on. I've got these, they don't fit me. You can have them. And everything was like too short for me. And yeah, but she was actually enthusiastic about that. And that gave me a lot of hope. So that gave me the strength to ask myself some really important questions and be a little more true and a little more honest with myself. So I started dressing and presenting as female when I was home alone. And eventually I knew that I was a woman. I knew that that was something that was true about me. And that was scary because I was in a relationship at the time with someone who I was with for 10 years. And I had this secret that I was holding. I had this confession that I needed to make to her. And that was really, really scary. Last year, I wrote something for International Women's Day for a keynote seminar that I'm going to try to summarize here because I feel like a lot of it is relevant. So when I came out to my girlfriend at the time, she decided that we couldn't be together anymore. And we had a lot of mutual friends, so she helped me write my coming out letter as a way of explaining to people why we were no longer together. And a lot of that coming out letter was about her and about us and our relationship. And it started with a quote that I like to share. And it is, "Love is taking a few steps backward, maybe even more, to give way to the happiness of the person you love." And that's by A.A. Milne, author of Winnie the Pooh. We're seeing a lot of children's literature references for me. I love I love children's literature. I really do. And in order to tell this story, I have to tell you a bit about where I was when I was coming out. Because 5 years ago, I was a really different person. I had just returned from living a year in Uganda, working with a human rights NGO. I was studying one of the top architecture programs in the country. I had a nice car, a loving partner, and a bright future. The only problem was I was a boy. 5 years ago, I decided I could no longer ignore the persistent anxiety and overwhelming discomfort that I felt every time I left the house. I could no longer pretend I was the person everybody thought they saw. I was, in fact, a woman. My partner at the time was the first person I uttered the words, "I'm a trans woman," to. And although she was supportive at first, remarkably, we were the same shoe size, 11. That's rare. And she gave me what are still one of my favorite pairs of heels. She taught me how to apply makeup and coordinate a half-decent outfit, because honestly, I was a hot mess. And a year after I told her, promise not to say her name. A year after I told her, my girlfriend helped me write my coming out letter, and she sat right next to me as I sent it out to our mutual friends. one by one. I had this list of 30 people that I wanted to eventually tell, 30 people who needed to know what was happening in my life. And I wanted to work up the courage to send that to one person. And that one person embraced me and was so happy for me that it gave me the courage to come out to another person and another person and another person. And people were so supportive that one by one, I'd gone through my whole list of 30 people that I wanted to tell. And I'm so grateful for that, because that's what I needed. I expected. I was terrified at the time coming out that people were going to think I was disgusting. People were going to think that I was perverted or I don't know. There was a lot of fear that people would reject me. That letter explained that I was trans and that I was going to begin hormone replacement therapy. August 12th. That's my true anniversary. I explained how incredibly supportive my girlfriend had been through this process. And I explained that after 10 years, we were breaking up. But the moments leading up to our separation were dismal at best. I suffered a mental breakdown that led to 4 months of being completely unmotivated. I dropped out of architecture school, and then I was fired from my job. I was constantly fighting to compromise with her about my gender presentation and physical appearance anytime we left the house together. I had to negotiate if my scarf was too colorful or if, you know, my jeans were too tight, because she was super, super self-conscious about how my presentation reflected her. It took me a really long time to realize that a lot of her support came with rigid conditions. She was very worried about what other people thought of her and kept much of my trans identity a secret. It cultivated a lot of shame and internalized transphobia that ultimately took years to unpack. And that's something to make note of, is that this is a process. There's a lot to work through in learning to love yourself and learning to live authentically. I still battle with a lot of internalized transphobia, and it's something to continue to improve. But eventually things got better after we separated. I found an apartment for myself, and a nice one too. Just wanted to treat myself right, like marble countertops. It was loft style, exposed ductwork. I loved it. It was my little place. And for the first time probably ever, I started to live my own life on my own terms. And that felt amazing. I come out to my coworkers. I was embraced wholeheartedly by them. I found an overwhelming amount of support from my friends and family. I was beginning to piece things together again, and this time with authenticity. I no longer felt the pressures to be somebody I wasn't. I knew I didn't want to be an architect, and I gave myself permission to take things slowly until I knew exactly what the next steps were. I told myself that I was allowed to work a little cafe job in the neighborhood and make minimum wage and just cover the bills and take my time for myself and really process who I was. And I continued working in that little cafe. I was perfectly content with that. Then one day it happens. My cafe started hosting a monthly comedy show. At the same time, I found myself with a story to tell. I made friends with the regular host and a couple of the comics, and they eventually encouraged me to come to an open mic. And it wasn't long before I was performing several times a week. Comedy became my outlet. It was a way for sharing my thoughts and experiences. And it on top of being a way to break down the barriers and the discomforts that people feel when talking about these issues. It became this perfect combination of my passion for advocacy and my desire to entertain. It taught me confidence, self-awareness, maybe even a little charm. I don't know how to do the eyebrows thing, and actually, it's quarantine, so these are February's eyebrows. I haven't touched them since. That's what the glasses are for. Where was I? So yeah, I found an amazing and community of supportive and inspirational friends. Comedy became a way for me to engage with the LGBTQ plus people in a community in a time when I felt isolated from them. I had a hard time connecting with the queer and trans community in the Waterloo area. And as a result of that, or as a solution, I started what at the time I called Alice's Big Queer Comedy Show, which was everything it promised. It was big, it was queer, and it was all about me. It quickly cultivated a following of queer audiences that I could engage with on my own terms. I knew how to talk to these people because they came here to hear jokes and stories, and that was my way of reaching out. That's how I solved my distance from the community at that time. And in just 2 years, this little show eventually grew to become the Comic Sans franchise that I produce today. And it's a series of shows across Southern Ontario that prioritizes queer and marginalized voices and is operated by 3 strong and talented women. It is also now just a little humble brag, nothing humble about it, now Canada's very first and only talent agency for queer and marginalized comedians. And I'm really proud of that. When just before the quarantine hit, I lost my day job and I decided to take the dive into producing and performing full time. And it's still way too early to say how long it'll last. Luckily, the government has decided to start funding artists, only they're funding us to not be artists. Thank you, CERB. Thank you to the CERB. But I'm so hopeful for the future, and I'm approaching it with a fervor and a passion that I never knew I had. I have a loving, beautiful girlfriend who supports me in every capacity, and a community of strong, compassionate, mostly queer women behind me, and I feel unstoppable because of it. My breakup with my ex-girlfriend was the catalyst for total change in my life that would not have been possible if I didn't have to fight so hard and put everything on the table to achieve it. It made me who I am today, someone I love wholeheartedly, someone I'll fight for, someone I believe in. And I think that's evident, so much so that the last time I talked to my ex-girlfriend, her very last words to me were, "I'm sorry for holding you back for so many years." Friends, guys, you know what that means? I won the breakup. I won the breakup. Sorry, that was petty. Actually, it's funny because last night my ex's mom called me. We still talk from time to time, and she told me that my ex is getting married. And I'm happy. I'm so happy for her. I really, really am. I'm happy that she found happiness. I'm happy that we made the right decision for the both of us and that each of us took the opportunity to pursue happiness to its fullest. And that's what I continue to do day in and day out. I guess that's what my story is about. It's not just a coming out story. It's not just a story of struggle, because I really didn't have a lot of struggle. I mean, of course I had struggles, but I always had the support of all of these incredible and strong and inspiring women. And my coming out story is a celebration of womanhood and what that has taught me. Because unlike most women, I had to fight to become her. I had to fight to be me. And it's also It's also a celebration. We're learning our dictation today. It's also a celebration of authenticity, because I spent 30 years in inauthenticity with a head full of questions that I didn't know the answers to, or I had the answers to, but I was afraid to admit them. My mouth is so dry today. Authenticity. Yeah. That's something I think people ask me every once in a while if you could be born biologically female, if you could be born assigned female at birth and be raised as a girl, as a woman, would you do that? Would you prefer that? And I wouldn't, because my transness has taught me so much about authenticity and about living authentically. And it's taught me more than I think a lot of people get to learn, at least so young in life and so early in life. And there's so much power in authenticity. There's so much drive when you know exactly who you are and when you know what you need to be happy and to pursue happiness, and you're willing to fight for that person. Anything is possible. And I went from somebody who was working in a coffee shop, learning to be authentic and learning who I was, to someone who is able to support herself by telling her story and able to share this story across a variety of platforms, and someone who's able to make space and build community for other queer people and other marginalized people. This journey, everything I accomplished, having a production company and a talent agency and a comedy career, the ability to work with Just for Laughs and CBC, and the opportunities to write about my experience. I just had an article published yesterday on CBC Arts about what it's like to be a trans comedian. I never saw my transness as an obstacle, as a hurdle to overcome. Certainly it did make things difficult, but I saw it as a platform. I saw it as something that taught me so much about myself and so much about where I came from and where I can go, that it has motivated me to work for what I really want. And I think that's the biggest message that I'd like to share, is that when you believe in yourself, anything is possible. And that just doesn't mean being told when you were a kid that you could be anything you want and believing that you could be an astronaut, but knowing that the answers to those life's big questions that we all have, and this isn't just a trans thing, these questions that everyone has, that, you know, what is my purpose in life? How do I find happiness? Does happiness exist? The existential questions of, you know, happiness doesn't exist, but the pursuit of happiness leads to fulfillment. All of these big questions that we have inside our minds, we also have the answers to in our hearts. And we know those answers, and it's just a matter of being strong enough and being not strong enough, because we're all strong, but being supported enough and being brave enough to handle those answers and follow them through. And when you're trans, you get this whole different experience, and this is something that you know, very few people get to do, to go through a second puberty, as terrible as that is. But I mean, everyone out in the audience, when if you had an estrogen based puberty, could you just imagine how much better that would be if you were excited for all of these things? If you were like, you saw, yeah, my boobs are tender and they're sore and they look weird, but oh my God, I have boobs. Oh my God, this is so validating. I got to name myself. I got to come up with my own name. That's what a trip. How do you give yourself a name at 30 years old? You have to decide to name yourself. And you know, I came up with something a little too basic, I think. Something I don't know, something that might not suit me, but it was an interesting process. People do ask me how I got my name, and it's a really unremarkable story. Every time I heard a name that I liked, I wrote it down. And I actually asked my mom very discreetly, like, hey, you know, if I was born a girl, did you, like, before you knew, did you have a girl's name picked out? And funny story, my mom came to visit, and she told me that when she was pregnant, before she had the ultrasound, she swore she was having a girl. Mama's always right. Sometimes it just takes a little longer to prove it. So I asked my mom early before I came out if she had a girl's name picked for me, and she was really proud when she smiled at me, and she said, yeah, I was going to name you Amy. Thank you. Next. Yeah, I wasn't having that. There was already an Amy. I had an Aunt Amy. So that wouldn't do. But it was an easy process. It happened accidentally. I liked the name Rose because it was feminine, it was floral, it was classic, it felt right. But I decided I didn't want to be Rose as a first name. That just sounded a little too, I don't want to say basic, but like I think that was. And then I remembered a friend I met in Uganda named Alice, and she was so strong. She was a lawyer, and she was fighting for human rights, and she was defending journalists and activists, and she was so badass that, you know, the name Alice really stuck with me. And I also wanted something that I could a name that wasn't already taken. Like, I didn't have anyone on my Facebook friends list. If I typed that in, like, I was stealing their name because I didn't want to steal anyone's name and make them feel weird. I overthought all of that a lot. But I also didn't want a weird name that I'd have to spell every time, which totally backfired because to every barista in Toronto's West End, I'm Alex with an X. Yeah. But that's how I came about my name. Alice made it on the list, and it always just stuck out and it felt right. And then went with the middle name Rose. Stage name Alice Rose because I don't like my last name, but I wouldn't legally change my last name because I don't want to break my mother's heart. Yeah. So coming out, that process of coming out and telling people who I was, that was really the easy part. Knowing what coming out meant, being able to come to terms with who that person was that I knew I had to become or had to fulfill. That was the challenge. And over time, from those 30 friends that I came out to who supported me, so many of them grew distant and then dropped off my Facebook wall and didn't really message me or call. when they knew I was in town, and they dropped off, but I made so many new friends, and I cultivated this entire community of people who only knew me as Alice, people who only saw me as who I am. And it's gotten to a point where even the people who knew me my whole life can't picture me as anything but Alice, as anything but me, because I'm so authentically that person. And I'll leave with one final thought, I think, because my mother came to visit and spend a week with me. And she had gastric bypass 18 months ago. So she went through a physical transition, a weight loss transition, and a health transition that has given her a lot of the same outlooks on life than I did, because she's finally not defined by the person that everyone sees that isn't her. And we had a lot of really, really constructive conversations and a lot of great, great dialogue about how she felt during my coming out, and how her journey has taught her that this was something I needed to do, and this was something that's empowered me to live this amazing life that I have right now. And that always sounds like bragging, but it's so true. My amazing life. I can't help but say, like, all of my dreams are coming true at exactly the same time, and there's no better feeling. There really is no better feeling. But I finally learned that when I came out to my mom, she, on the outside, had nothing but support and encouragement and love for me, but on the inside, it was quite a struggle. And I'd be failing you by not telling you this part of the story, because my story is unique in that I didn't lose family members. I didn't suffer, and I wasn't disowned, or I didn't break anyone's heart, and I didn't lose any love in my life. And that is something that so many queer and trans people go through, that I do have to share this, that my mom was secretly struggling a lot. She lost a daughter when I was very, very young. And when I came out to her, a lot of her feelings came back, because she was feeling like she lost a son. She felt like she asked herself if she had done anything wrong in raising me, because she was a single mom and I didn't have, a strong father figure or a male influence to toughen me up and put hair on my chest. And I had those people. I had uncles who were so close to me, and I had a stepfather, and I had all of these people. And I hated those things about them. I hated being in the wilderness and hunting and fishing and all of those like manly things. So it wasn't her fault. But as much as she struggled, as much as she rejected that idea and felt and mourned a loss of somebody that she knew, she still found the strength to embrace the person who I was showing her. And she believed in me. She believed in me enough to know that this was something that I had to do, and this was something that was true about me. And she told herself that I would still make her proud. And through this time, through everything in the last 5 years, I've had every opportunity to make her proud, and she is. So if anyone here is going through those struggles or having those fears, it's not always easy. It's never easy for any of us. I'm the best case scenario, and I still struggled so much. It's not easy, but it always gets better. And when you make more meaningful connections and more authentic connections with people, the people who are in your life right now, the people who come in and out of your life, you're going to surround yourself with people who support and respect and love you, and they love you for who you are. And the people in your life who feel a little weird about it right now, most of them will get over it, and most of them will come back to support you and love you again. And I think that's all I want to say. I went completely off script there, and I hope I made at least a little sense. I'm going to invite Falynn back onto the stage. Can you tell I'm such a performer? I'm in my living room and we're making a stage. We're gonna answer a few questions, I guess, for you.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it just a few comments about your coming out story.
Sure.
I really want, like, I know not everybody is trans, we all go through different things, but I do believe like getting in touch with your true self, anyone can identify with that. If you're living your life and you don't feel genuine, you don't feel authentic. I even have that from a couple of years ago. I was living a life I thought I was supposed to live, but it was never mine. And until I was able to step into my own shoes and live that life, nothing really made sense. So when you were sharing about you and, you know, living that authentic life, it really does take living and creating life in a totally different way, because most of the times we just get through the days. But when you know who you are and you love yourself and you appreciate yourself, respect goes a long way. The days aren't as bad. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that part of your story, because I do believe that can resonate with anyone.
Right, that story and that journey of finding yourself. We grow up with so many expectations from other people, expectations from parents and teachers and family members and friends, that it's so, and yourself.
Yeah. You can be pretty hardcore on that. So I have a few questions here, if you're up for it.
Before you ask those, okay. I'll share with everybody, if you have a question for Alice.
I do actually have a couple.
Awesome. So if anybody watching though has a question for Alice, how we can go about sharing those. If you're joining us on Zoom, there is a Q&A function at the very bottom. So you can click that and then type in your question and I will ask it for you. If you're joining in on Facebook Live, you can just type your comment, or sorry, your question right into the comment section and we will ask Alice. But in the meantime, you go for it.
All right, Alice, I have a question for you. When you were on stage, when you were first getting on stage, was it hard? The judgment that you thought that you might get, did that make it debilitating in any way to get on stage, or did you just go on there? I know I read your article about the fact that you were a little self-deprecating in the beginning of it, and you would make fun of yourself. Did you find that made it easier to do, or were you trying to take the attention off of yourself in a certain way? Because I know I used to do that, be a little self-deprecating. How was it when you were first performing? Like, give me a little bit about that.
Yeah, when I was first performing, I like to say, I think I had the line in my notes here that I found this community and this platform of stand-up comedy at the same time I finally felt that I had a story to tell. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I thought that story to tell was about transitioning. I was early in transition. I was very visibly trans. And it was difficult because it felt like getting up on stage and coming out all over again to a complete crowd of drunk strangers. That's terrible.
And you weren't even ready, like you didn't even fully know who you were at that time, probably.
No, not at all. Not at all. I was still figuring myself out. everything was so up in the air and I was piecing things together. And it was I remember the first time I went up on a stage and performed at a little open mic, and it was a room full of 7 or 8 of my friends, and then a bunch of bar patrons who weren't paying attention whatsoever. But I was so self-conscious, particularly about my voice. I have a lot of dysphoria surrounding my voice. And for anyone for whom dysphoria is a new term, dysphoria is an extreme discomfort or an intense feeling of anxiety about a gendered part of your identity. So it can be a physical dysphoria, which is your physical features and your appearance and all of those things. So those are things about your gender or your assigned gender that cause intense discomfort. I had a lot of dysphoria around my voice. I still do. I still hate. It bothers me that I can hear myself in my ears, but I'm getting over it. And when, I was a theater student, I was a theater major in high school, so I know how to project my voice, but standing up there, my voice came out as a tiny squeak. I was barely audible, barely audible, and I was so nervous. I ran away from my first few open mics because I was too scared to do it.
Runaway comic. That might have actually probably thought that was part of it.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. like a really lazy Andy Kaufman. Like subvert everyone's expectations by not even showing up to the stage.
Do you have time for another question?
I do.
I have some other questions that we have here that were sent in. What was it? I don't know. I know you said that you had broken up with the person you were with. What was it like when you first started dating as a trans woman?
Oh my God. Okay.
I love the dating site, so I just want at least one story.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, imagine I was with this person for 10 years. Do you remember MSN Messenger? That was how I dated. When I dated, I had to call a girl and ask her dad if she was home to ask her out on a date. So jump forward a literal generation.
No parents are involved in online dating at all. Like they have no idea what their kids are doing.
Yeah. And probably for the better, because I would have no respect for my children if they were online dating. Oh my God. But yeah, now it's like you can order dick like pizza. Sorry, you can. It's like Uber Eats. You can It's so sorry. I'm so sorry.
No, but you can order a lot of stuff.
Yeah, you can order everything, even your intimate relations, and it's something where it's so transactional and it's so.
It's very screen culture, though. Like you don't.
It is, yeah.
Very surface.
Yeah. So yeah, that whole aspect is one thing, but dating as a trans woman, it was terrifying because I never knew if the people I was talking to knew I was trans, and then there's only so much self-esteem that you can have and only so much strength that you can have in having that conversation with people. To be rejected or to be insulted or asked very uncomfortable questions, dating was a real struggle for me, and something I did out of obligation, I guess.
Kind of what you're supposed to do now.
Yeah. And then they're addicting too, because you do have people who are like, oh girl, you're so gorgeous. And I do sexually identify as an attention whore. So that appealed to me, to have that validation and have those conversations with people. Yes. But it also led to problems with stalkers and problems with people.
Can we let people know that there's also people, and this is just from my opinion, from knowing other trans women and trans men, they would have issues with certain individuals maybe being into a fetish, and they would hit on a certain person based on that's what they're into.
Yes, so that was another thing. So I always had to reveal to people that I was trans, because when I put in my bio or in my profiles, like I identified myself as trans, I only seemed to be getting a certain type of person. And that was a person who was only interested in my body.
And that's not what you're looking for. You want someone that's there for the mind and the heart.
Exactly. I want someone who's there for both. Honestly,
All the good things.
in the 4 years that I was dating, it took 4 years to find somebody who wasn't compromising one for the other. Find somebody who wasn't only interested in the physical, in the fetish aspect of it, or people who were only interested in me but had conflict with my transness. And 3 years, because we've been together for over a year now, but it took 3 years to find that person who was in love with me, or who was in love with my body and the person inside that body.
Everything.
Yes.
That's a beautiful thing. And you can tell when someone is with you for you and not what you can give them or how you make them feel.
We'd hope so.
Now let's check in with Christine. Christine, do you have any questions from Facebook that you want to share?
I don't have any questions from Facebook, but I have a question.
Okay.
Yes.
So I'd like to ask about teaching children about trans identities and how you would approach that.
That's a good question.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good question. And I'm going to do my best to act and pretend I didn't submit that question myself. Very good question. Give me a moment to think about that. Thank you. Thank you so much, Christine. No, I wanted to submit that question as a talking point because I think I hear a lot about people who have issue talking to children about gender and about transness, because a lot of people have feel there's this inherent sense of sexuality and of like an obscene sexuality at that. And first of all, gender and sex and gender and sexuality are two completely different things. You can be a trans woman, you can be gay, straight, bi,
asexual. Yeah.
Asexual. I'm demisexual, so like people think that when you're a trans woman, you know, you do it so that you can attract more men. That's a big stereotype, and honestly, I don't know if I'm attracted to people, and I don't want people to be attracted to me until I really get to know them and trust them. So that's
I identify
definitely
as demisexual as well. It's very much a connection with that one person.
Yes, I can never watch erotic material because it's just like, who are these gross people? Like, I don't know you. Don't, put it away. Yes, but I think it's important to teach children about gender, because both gender and sexuality, you're not born with those things. Before puberty, you don't have an inherent sexuality. And I believe before you hit puberty, you don't have an inherent gender. You can be biologically, in terms of biological sex, male or female, but everything else, like RuPaul says, we're born naked, everything else is drag. We're born genderless, everything else is performance. Everything else is fulfilling those social stereotypes and those social obligations of the binary gender. And I think by teaching children the very basics, that you don't have to talk about genitals or sex or how trans people have sex or any of those things, because you wouldn't talk to children about how cis people or straight people do those things. And that's, it's just as simple as saying some women were born boys and some men were born girls, and some people, we have a sense of our gender. Some of us feel it much more strongly than others. Those are simple questions or conversations to have with children. And I think those are conversations we should be having with children to inform them and to normalize gender diversity. Yeah.
I agree with that. I just when I had you come out to the comedy show last year, that was one of the ones that wasn't a children friendly. But prior to that and after that, I did make a lot of the things that I did, like, didn't matter the age. And I would tell you, I had a woman in her 50s, a trans woman, who said she had never been near a child. And this child was dressed in the trans colors and had his hair all spiked up with a little flag. And this woman like took me aside and said, if I ever would have been near a child, I would have got beat up or something. And she's like, this is the most beautiful thing. Why can't we normalize it? Why can't we all just be human beings who just know who we are? And that's why I wanted you on the show, because I believe that your story and the type of person you are is, you're just trying to seek a normal life for all of us. Like, we don't have to be segregated. We can all just be human. And I love what you're doing with the comedy thing as well. You're reaching out to a lot of different demographics, not just the queer community.
Thank you. And that's such a heartbreaking and touching story at the same time,
Yes.
where somebody feels like they can't have children in their lives. And
I think that was a society thing that had based, because this person had been out of the closet for about 20 years. If you go back 20 years ago, we were in a completely different world.
Right. We didn't even have the language of transness and
bathrooms, all of
transness.
that, right? Like, it was it was a mess.
Yeah, it definitely came out at the right time. And I think that's important to think, is that, like, it's tragic to me because this person didn't have children in their life.
Yes.
And that's because change is generational. And I admire all of my friends who have children and people my age and younger who are having children, because they're raising children without this, without all of these prejudices and without
societal norms.
Yes, and the societal, like the racism and the misogyny, like we're learning all of these things. So children are being raised without these inherent tools for hate.
They're also being raised to know that women can get it done just as good as men.
Yeah.
That is not a generation that we all grew up with. So it's beautiful.
Right.
I have a 2.5-year-old, and his favorite book right now is it's the Book of Feminism for Boys, and I love it. We read it every single night.
Okay, I love that book.
That's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
I do love that. I think it's great to start early. For sure. I think I have one more question, unless there's something from the audience.
No, our audience is kind of typical, is a little bit shy. So I will encourage anybody who's out there on Zoom, anyone who's out there on Facebook, if you have a question, now is the time to ask it.
Here's one that we have.
And Facebook Live comments, and on Zoom in the Q&A function right there, you can just type in your question and we'll anonymously share it. So
I've got a question here from someone who wants to know, who is your favorite drag queen? Do you follow drag culture? Is that something that you are into?
I don't follow like RuPaul's drag culture. I don't follow televised drag culture. I'm such a drag hipster. Like, my drag is local and organic, and I need to know where she came from and if she was treated right. I work with a lot of incredible drag queens. I've had the pleasure of working with Selena Vile, who's someone who's really, whose performances, she's a Toronto drag queen. Her performances have really touched me politically and spiritually. It's so strong.
What about Michelle Ross? Did you ever meet Michelle Ross?
No, I didn't meet Michelle Ross.
Oh, this is going back a bit, but I do miss Toronto drag. I do.
Yeah, Gay Jesus is someone who's wildly influential. They have a CBC special, Canada's a Drag. There's an episode about them. On a more international scale, let's see, Peppermint, obviously being the first out trans person to compete in Drag Race, who does a lot of great work, is tremendously influential. But yeah, I don't watch a lot of Drag Race. I just don't like reality TV. I don't like I've done too much work transcribing interviews and things for reality TV, where like I know how the sausage is made, and Yeah, and I also think drag is so much more than what's conveyed on that show. Drag is more than female impersonation.
It's
It's this
community. It's like
wonderful performance
more
art,
work.
and
Yes.
yeah, and it's community engagement. And yeah, shout out to Selena Vile, shout out to Gay Jesus, shout out to
My
um,
girlfriend just made a big hoot about gay Jesus. So I
oh
actually, I've heard of gay Jesus, but don't know as much as I should.
yeah, they're such a wonderful, incredible person. Visa Decline, who was heroin for a very long time, is a drag
Yes.
comedian in Toronto, is just incredible. Um, Troy Parks, Guelph and Waterloo, Sapphire Poison, all of these people are just amazing. Support your local drag performers.
Support local.
Yeah, because they need your help and they need
They
your
need
money
your
right now
help.
because there is yeah.
They don't have RuPaul's cameras on them. I have
Mm-hmm.
another question. I'm not going to say the name, but it is a friend of mine and wants to know, as a future healthcare provider, how can I best educate myself on providing inclusive care of trans people? Can you point me in the direction of some resources?
Resources for educating yourself on inclusive care to trans people. So
As a
on
healthcare provider, like,
yeah, on the spot, I can't think of any literary resources. I know there are some, and this is Shelley. Please feel free to reach out to me, and I can forward you some. I just have to open up my bookmarks and things like that. There are different processes. I know the Women's College Hospital is doing a lot of work, and there is a clinic in Guelph. There's a gender variant clinic in Guelph that's doing incredible work. So when I was medically transitioning, when I was seeking medical transition, I had a really, really difficult time because a lot of doctors, my general practitioner, and a lot of healthcare providers aren't very familiar with their liabilities and their responsibilities in providing trans care. They feel like they're not experts. So long story short, to give a condensed answer, the informed consent process is something that is revolutionary in Ontario, and this is a process whereby you, as a healthcare provider, can have a contract or an agreement in front of you where you go over each individual risk, each individual side effect, and you know with your patient that they understand those risks and they're willing to take those risks, and then you both sign that, and then your liability is alleviated. So they have made this choice and they know that they're being educated. And in that case, you can prescribe low dose estrogen and testosterone blockers. You can prescribe hormone replacement therapies and start working with that patient to give them the care that they want. You don't have to force them to live as their preferred gender for a year, which is an archaic practice. You don't need a you don't need a psych evaluation. You don't need referrals from endocrinologists or all of those sort of gatekeeping things that people use. So the informed consent process is something that we believe in and that should be standard in all clinics. And also, gender is not binary, and it can be difficult to assist a trans person who is non-binary or is trans feminine or trans masculine and doesn't fall as I am a man or a woman. And for all of us, this is our lives. We're not taking this lightly. This isn't a flighty decision. We've done the research. We've talked to people. We've sought out help. We've come out to people. We've made those risks, and they're educated risks. So please believe us when we say we need something because we know what we need.
Mhm.
Obviously, there may be unrealistic expectations of I want a D cup, but in terms of those processes of stunting puberty, of hormone replacement therapy, all of those things, by the time we're coming to you, we've already done all of the homework.
Thought about it a million
So,
times.
yeah. And we know more than you about the, I mean, I don't know you as a healthcare provider, but we typically know more about the side effects and
We do research.
the physical changes. Yeah, we're
do
prepared for
research.
this. Yes.
That's
But
really
great question. Great question.
That is a good question. I have one more question that you and I can both help answer.
Sure.
Someone wants to know what is demisexual. So I'll let you share, and then if I can, I'll add anything in. If not, I'm sure you'll cover it.
Right. So demisexuality is, it's hard to explain because I don't feel a sexual attraction for people that I don't know. And when I'm dating, I will go on dates with people. Like, I don't know objectively if someone is attractive to me or not. I don't have those physical responses to new people, which is why I made the joke that I don't watch erotic films because, you know, who are these strangers? I don't know them. My romantic and my sexual attachment to people or those responses come with a friendship. They come with the process of getting to know somebody, talking to somebody, learning about them as people.
Discovering that heart and soul that you may connect with.
Yeah, it can come off as really cheesy of like, I need to feel love before I give myself up. But it's more than that. Like, my connections come from human connections with people, which is why I don't really have a gendered sexuality where I'm attracted to men and or women. I mean, I'm attracted to all genders because I'm attracted to people.
Yes.
Mind you, I do like a good, sorry, we're
and we're back.
Yeah.
Is there any, I'm going to look on my end and I'm going to have Christine look on your end. Is there anything else that people are asking?
I have one more question.
Okay.
So Alice, how do you think your life would be different if you were born biologically female, assigned female at birth?
That's a really good question. Just one moment. I'm just responding to Shelly with my email address to reach out to me and we can talk.
Oh, we do have one more question. Oh, the mayor just jumped on. Hi, Jim. Mr. Jim Diodati, the mayor of Niagara Falls, is watching. I just want to say hello to him.
Did somebody say daddy?
Diodati.
Sorry.
Hey, the mayor. If Jim's watching that, he's laughing. I do have one more question for you. Comedy influences. Who do you find hilarious?
Comedy influences. I love Al Val, absolutely. I'm fortunate enough to be really good friends with Al Val. They were on the very first comedy show that I saw live, and they were the person who I thought.
In Toronto, right? He is in Toronto. He's a Toronto.
Yeah. We were just on a show on Wednesday together.
That's awesome.
Tuesday. What day is it today? Quarantine. Time is weird now.
There's no time in quarantine.
Yeah. Al Val's a huge influence and was a huge influence before realizing any of their gender explorations.
Very gender fluid. For anyone that doesn't know, Al Val has the Al name, the Val name, and does like, I've only seen him once at, I think it was, he did a live at Taps.
Oh yeah. So Al is gender fluid and can present as either male or female.
He is pretty or handsome. Always the same question.
Yeah, if I could be as good looking as one gender as Al is in all genders, I would be a supermodel. Yeah, Al is a huge inspiration because they were a really strong influence as a comedian in the beginning, and then through their gender exploration and coming out as an established comedian and saying, hey, this is something about me and we're going to start talking about it. And learning to have those honest conversations like they do on stage. Kyle Brownrigg was a huge influence to me in the beginning. You know, when I was growing up, I'm ashamed to admit I loved all the classics, you know, Dave Chappelle, Dane Cook a little bit. I don't know. I don't want to say
You're like,
Tom
I don't want to
Green.
name drop any of these people.
Yeah, Tom Green was somebody I thought was hilarious, you know, in the wrong puberty.
Wrong.
That's what testosterone does to you. It is a drug. It is a drug, and it should be outlawed. Yeah, lots of influences are just other queer comedians, either queer comedians I've met since starting to do stand-up, and people who have started. Every time I see a queer or a trans comedian on a microphone, no matter what their level is, that's inspiring to me, because it shows me that there are more people like me who want to tell their stories. And that's
and Comic Sans is about like promoting the marginalized, right? And
right. So we're about creating space for marginalized people, and we believe that queer comedy is an umbrella term, is this genre of comedy that comes from a place of speaking from experience and talking honestly and sharing stories and sharing life experiences and treating people like humans. So that's where we differ from most stand-up comedy, but we won't get into that.
That's a whole other series.
Yes. Did we just start a podcast? I think we did.
This is a 24-hour show. We're going all night, folks.
Are there any other questions?
I'm good on my end.
I think we're good.
Okay.
I just wanted to say a huge thank you to not only the museum for providing this platform, but to this lovely woman, Christine, that you see here, that does all the behind the scenes work, which is a lot. And I just appreciate the fact that we're all able to come together and share this evening. So
you're gonna make me blush.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Christine. You've been so helpful and so great in walking me through this process, and bless you for giving me a microphone for 45 minutes, because I'm sure you had no idea what you were getting yourself into.
We had a bit of an idea.
But it was, and thank you for giving people, giving queer people, especially queer people in the Niagara region, where I know that it's not as accepting as Toronto, and not as easy as Toronto to be yourself. Thank you for giving a platform for us and
thank you for the inspiration as well.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls,
and everyone in between,
Alice Rose.
Before we go, can I just give one more, because I think
you can give two
sometimes, if anyone, let's see, what's today, Thursday? Let's give it until Monday evening. If you have questions, if you're watching this after the fact, and you have any questions, pop them in the comments. Send me an email or a Facebook message, or get to me somehow, and I'll do another Facebook Live Q&A where I'll answer all those questions to the best of my ability.
Oh, thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Alice. That's amazing. And I think one last thing we wanted to do just before we left is I'm going to do a little screen share here.
All right.
And Falynn and Alice, do you want to just talk about some of these? We just wanted to share some support systems for anybody in the audience. So first here we have some mental health support systems.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about Coast Niagara. I actually use Coast Niagara sometimes, multiple times in a month. I do have my own therapist, which I do feel is very important for everybody to try and have some type of therapy in their life. But there are times where you can't get a hold of your therapist or your doctor. So I find that Coast is a 24/7. I've never had an issue with them. If you do call them and you are feeling like you're going to injure yourself or something, I will let you know that they will do their best to send some type of police or ambulance to you, because they really do care. So if you're calling and you just want to talk about things that are going on, whether you be in crisis, they're a great person to call, because they're going to help triage you and let you know where to go next. So, and also Kids Health Phone, Justin Preston is someone that I work with. And the thing about Kids Health Phone when I was younger was mainly just for children. Now they are getting into more young adults, because there's kind of that gray area where we don't have that for the young adults. So even if you're 18, 19, 20, feel free to call Kids Health Phone. There will be somebody there that can help you. And then we have the Canadian Suicide Prevention and Connex Ontario Mental Health and Addiction Services. So, I mean, addiction, substance abuse, things like that go hand in hand with mental health. So we provided, I think, a good amount of things that would be helpful if you're in need.
And then our next one is LGBTQ plus support organizations.
Alice?
Yeah, so the Trevor Project is huge. They have a chat room. They have a bunch of resources. They have a helpline. They have all of these great resources for queer and trans people. The Canadian Centre for Gender and Sexual Diversity are great. Trans Lifeline. The statistics for suicide among trans and gender nonconforming people is alarmingly high, and for suicide. And just to note that suicide and suicidal ideation, suicidal feelings are not a permanent label on you, and that doesn't mean that you're suicidal. And you can reach out for help, and it doesn't put a scarlet letter on you. And the Trans Lifeline is trained for very trans-specific issues and needs, and they're very well educated. There are a few more. PFLAG does a lot of advocacy work. All of these places are great, and they're not only like the Trans Lifeline and the Trevor Project are mental health resources, but so many of these are organizations that support and embrace and highlight queer people, and they do a lot to celebrate queer people as well. And I think it's important, just as important, to show the good with the bad, and when you have issues and you need someone to talk to, that there are resources for that as well. Or if you just feel alone and you want to feel like there are other people who are queer and happy, that helps as well. Thank you for sharing all of these. This is great.
And just so everyone knows, even if you feel that, you know, maybe your problem isn't that big, but it affects you on the daily, reach out, because one thing is knowing that you're not alone. It gives some type of solace to get through things. So reach out, even if you don't think it's that big of a deal, but it's bothering you, reach out and get some help.
Everyone needs someone to talk to. Everyone needs, no one doesn't need a therapist. Nobody.
I think therapy should be mandatory, but that's.
It should.
I would.
Yeah. Nobody's worse off for talking to somebody who's trained in therapy and mental health. And mental health is like, we live in an artificial world of houses and technology and things that our organic bodies and minds don't really know how to deal with, and sometimes
we don't even really need
help.
them either.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, mental health is something for everybody, and you don't need to be suicidal. You don't need to want self-harm to just feel like you want to reach out to somebody. And I do a lot. I have a regular therapist, and I call 24-hour support lines, and I call other online counselors and things like Wobot, which is a great
and you never feel guilty about it, right? Because this is something we should be doing, because these resources are here to help us.
Exactly, exactly. And yeah, sometimes I have a therapist, but my therapist knows me a little too well. So if I want to talk about something and not get into all that other stuff, I'll call someone up on the phone, and you never feel guilty. People are they're it's I don't want to be like it's their job to talk to you, but people are happy.
It
You know, when these people have these jobs for a reason and they want to reach out to people who are in need and they want to help.
I just
Just like
think growing up, there was a lot of stigma. I know, like, even in the 90s, there was a lot of stigma along with, oh, you have to see a therapist, or, oh, like, you have to see a shrink. And even as a younger kid, I kind of thought, wow, you must have to be really messed up to see one of those people. Apparently not. You just have to be messed up enough. But growing up, there was a stigma along with that. So
there really was,
I love
yeah.
that that's going away a bit, and now it's a little more neutral. I enjoy that.
It is, because I was undiagnosed with ADHD. I went undiagnosed until I was 23. I suffered from anorexia in my teenage years and addiction and all
So
of
many
these
side
things
effects
that,
with everything. Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, if therapy was normalized, I might, have saved myself a lot of trouble and a lot of time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm pro therapy all the time. I would tell everybody, go talk to someone.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Alice.
Thank you,
I don't
Falynn, and
think
thank
your
you,
name is,
Christine.
I don't think your name is basic, okay?
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Come on.
I like it. My middle name is Rose, so that is just beautiful.
It is?
Alan Rose and Alice Rose.
Twins.
We're like sisters.
Yeah.
I'm feeling left out. My
Aw.
name is not Rose.
Rose. That's her middle name too.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Falynn.
Thank you, Christine.
So lucky here at the museum to be able to bring this programming to the community and to be seen as an ally where these conversations can happen. So thank you so much to the both of you for sharing your story with our museum community and helping us to have these conversations in the Niagara region.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Everyone have a great night. Thank you for joining in.
Thanks for joining in, everyone. All right. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.